What's happening, y'all? My name is Blair Johnson, and this thing is called the Badass Records Podcast. And we're a handful of episodes in, and so an explanation of what it is felt warranted. And it's really just an opportunity to sit down with folks in person, one-on-one, connect with who they are, what they're into, what some of their favorite music has been across eras in their life. So that's what we're doing. The thing lives on badassrecordspodcast.com if you want to be on it. badassrecordspodcast@gmail.com. If you want to consume it elsewhere from the website, there's a YouTube. You can get it where you stream your podcasts. And that's really it. It's people, music, badass records. It's been super fun so far. I've met a lot of really cool people and listened to a lot of really cool music that they are into. And so that's the Skinny. Appreciate you stopping by. Hope you enjoy the show. Well, thank you very much for being here. I think this will be episode number 122, Badass Records Podcast, hanging with Brian McCarty. Currently the mandolinist for the Matchsellers, as well as Greg Blake and Hometown.
That's right.
Cool. Very cool. Well, thank you for being here. Are there, beyond those two, any other mentions or plugs?
I also, the banjo player that plays with me with Greg Blake, Todd Davis is his name. We have a duet thing, Davis and McCarty.
Cool.
We go around and do just like some of the old time.
That's a catchy.
Yeah.
Feels bluegrass, like an old bluegrassy
sure,
record.
Yeah.
It's old Davis and McCarty.
Yeah. So that's our approach too. We just do the old like brother duet stuff.
Okay.
Like country
Cool.
And mostly bluegrass, but
Now, best place to keep Matchsellers tabs is Instagram or no?
Instagram and or Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what about Greg Blake and Hometown?
Greg Blake and Hometown. So Facebook presence is a little lacking. Following Greg himself.
Okay.
Is probably the best way to do that.
Okay.
He pops up everywhere.
On Facebook. Following him on Facebook. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
That's the best way. He's on Instagram too, and he might be on some of the others.
Sure.
But those are the only two that I ever check.
And Davis and McCarty, you said?
Yeah. I just finally put up a page for that recently, so I'm trying to get that rolling.
Cool.
Get some content up
Excellent.
there. But yeah, that picked up out of nowhere. He was just like wanting, hey, you want to do a duet show with me? I said, yeah, sure. And next thing you know, we were getting asked to go do different stuff here and there. So
Hell yeah. Nice.
yeah, it's a nice fill-in.
Well, I appreciate you being here. Are you born and raised in the area?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I grew up out in Lee Summit.
Okay.
And
cool.
I was born in Independence.
Right on.
Yeah,
right on.
Lived around here my whole life.
Siblings?
Yeah, I have 2 sisters, and then several stepsisters,
Sure.
a stepbrother.
Okay.
And, yeah, it's very extended, blended
Yeah.
sort of family, definitely.
And any idea how mom and dad met?
My mom and dad met at a traffic light, at a red light.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
In vehicles?
Yeah, in vehicles, yeah. My mom was, she had just gone through a separation
Okay.
with her first marriage. She had 2 daughters, my older sisters. And I don't know if it was just a rough time or time was just right, but she looked over at this guy in the car next to her, and they locked eyes, and he rolled down the window and said, you want to pull over and talk? And she, right? Yeah, you wouldn't do that nowadays, but she said yes, and that was it.
And he didn't murder her.
He did not murder her, no. Yeah, he was from Ohio and was working as a janitor.
Okay.
At a school.
Interesting.
And,
well, in trying to poke around to learn a little bit about you, I think on the Greg Blake page, there's some bio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mom was in a gospel band.
She was. Yes.
And dad was part of that too.
Yep. He so my real father, he passed when I was very young.
Okay.
He was involved. He ran sound for that band and did a lot of wrangling for them whenever they would play. They were pretty local. They were like a country gospel band. They were called Cross Country
Nice.
back then. And whenever she met my stepfather, he was actually drumming for them on and off. So then had the drums and access to all that.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
yeah.
So, were your folks, would they put on music to listen to in the home when you guys were young?
My mom was always singing,
Okay,
you know,
sure.
and practicing. So they had like sound. She sang to a lot of soundtracks later on, after she had a full band. But you know, there was always a lot of live music in the house because
Interesting.
band practice
Yeah.
and things like that.
Always at your place.
Yeah,
Fun.
yeah. So and if we were in the car, it was always music. A lot of friends, their records.
Okay. They were
things
friends
like
with
that.
other folks doing live music or recording.
yeah, and especially in the gospel and country gospel scene, it's very small, very
Sure.
close knit, but regionally they network well. So yeah, there was a ton of. We were traveling all the time, conventions when I was a kid, things
Sure.
like that. So
What? So if you guys are in the car and listening to stuff, it's typically music from friends that are also musicians.
yeah, at that time, yes, for sure.
Okay. So, what about you? Did you, I can't even imagine growing up with this sort of level of, talent and playing gigs and stuff like this. But you obviously, it had an influence on you, an impact on you. Did you, at some point, begin a music collection of your own?
Yeah, I did. A lot of that was just like, I mean, I didn't buy records.
Okay.
I got mine at the library.
Nice.
So a lot of it was accidental, just like going through bins and things like that. John Denver was like the first one I remember really out of nowhere latching on to.
Sure. Yeah.
Later on, I kind of realized it's the folky sort of connection and type of music I like,
That's cool. Is it
melody-wise.
any idea what the John Denver was? Was it a collection or a studio album?
It
or-
was a live record. I think
Oh.
it was live at Red Rocks, something
really?
like
Cool.
that.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
so it was an epic,
Yeah.
resounding performance
Yeah.
from him. And later on, too, after he had all of his hits, so it was just the hits, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I loved that record for
Yeah,
sure.
my mom's car, 71 WHB AM oldies, and my dad had a little like 24 case of 8 tracks. There's a couple kid thing like a Sesame Street and a Muppets in there, but then most everything else was John Denver and Oak Ridge Boys and things. So it's like. He's one of the first folks that I remember being like, man, this guy, like,
He could sing.
prolific.
Oh,
like
yeah.
he's not that I had that word at my disposal, but just an awareness of like, this dude's like cranking out songs, man. I mean, it's like, how many?
And how many like massive classics like Country Roads.
Yeah.
The funny thing like about that song is I don't to this day listen or pursue John Denver. I just remember all these from when I was a kid. Plus everybody has covered Country Roads, right?
Yeah,
Everyone knows that song. Anytime I'm around like a large group of foreign people especially and we're trying to that's like always something we could connect with.
For real?
Is John Denver.
No kidding.
And they're like, "Do you know Country Roads?" I'm like, "Of course I know Country Roads. Let's do it." And they'll sing right along.
Nice.
Every time, so.
I mean, off the top, Country Roads, of course, for Baby, for Bobby, Follow Me.
Yep. Annie's song.
Annie's song.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Man, yeah, a lot of good ones.
Oh, yeah.
So you are exposed to live music early and often. Is there a show that wasn't necessarily from that family friend fabric that you saw or attended that stands out from youth? Or
Unfortunately, I have still never been to like a huge, like what you would call a show, where
Okay.
people talk about like, yeah, I saw AC/DC or this level of. I've never been to a show like that ever.
not even like Missouri State Fair
No,
or
not even
concert
like,
in the
I would
park?
say I would say the biggest thing, like when I was a kid, I was involved in a regional kids choir at they did a KC 150 celebration at Arrowhead,
Okay.
and they had Aretha Franklin,
Nice.
Little Richard, and Kenny Rogers sang
Interesting.
at that one. So
Okay.
we got to be behind that. That was awesome. Other than that, man, there used to be this Christian artist named Carmen who did just these epic stage shows and crazy theatrics and had like really overproduced like good Christian rock music back in the day. So saw him at Kemper
Okay. Okay.
for some reason, and Reba McEntire's little sister opened for him at that show.
Wow.
What a weird.
Yeah. That's funny.
So I grew up. It was really all my live music consumption was basically of the gospel variety.
Okay.
Growing up.
Gotcha. Now, so the fill in on drums bit from your bio also mentioned 15 to 17 years of playing mandolin. Is that right?
By now, let's see. I started when I was 13, so I've been for 22 years.
22 years. Okay.
Playing mandolin.
Now that drum fill in, did you know what you were doing at the kit?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
So my mom, of course, there's the like, oh, when you were a baby stories.
Yeah.
She says, yeah, I used to dig out Nana's pots and pans.
Sure.
And you'd sit there and you would arrange them into a drum set and just click right along. And so from the time I was a kid, I had, little air guitars and toy ones. And I would always play along at practice like I was part of the band.
Sure.
I wanted to be in a band at no matter what cost. So
Yeah.
that was my first chance. Was he had to run an emergency call at work,
Okay.
and I just stepped in on boom chicka boom chicka boom,
Nice.
easy country stuff.
Yeah.
Couldn't reach the bass drum. So
Nice.
yeah, that
So
was.
is that your first instrument then? Drums?
Drums? Yeah.
And how long are you practicing that?
I really didn't.
Okay.
I could probably sit down and keep a country beat to this day, but I haven't played drums seriously since I was a child.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the trajectory from that to today? Like where does mandolin come next, or you guitar and then you deviate?
That's down the road, actually. I went to piano.
Okay.
Started taking piano. I had lessons for about 7 years. I always say until the teacher found out that I couldn't read the sheet music, then that sort of fell apart, which I couldn't. I still, to this day, I can't read a lick of sheet music. I was watching what he was playing, and then I would play it back.
Just from
and
memory.
I just bullshitted my way through 7 years of $30 a week piano lessons.
There must be, we're doing, I don't know, year 6 or 7 right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, fascinating that you, it says something about your memory that you can take the pots and pans and arrange them, in the way from just seeing it, and then you can pick up, how to keep a rhythm, and then watch what the piano teachers
mimicry.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Way, my mom always say, "Oh, you got a photographic memory." I don't think I do, but I
flirting with
might be.
Yeah,
something.
Okay. So piano for 7 years.
Yeah, and then I was enamored with the fiddle, violin. So I decided in 3rd grade, I think, is when they started offering that at least some at schools to go into the orchestra. So same thing there. I stuck with that until they figured out I was just watching the other children and playing along that way. So I took about 2 years of that, but I kept the violin. My parents bought it outright and said, well, we play country, maybe he'll learn to play the fiddle. And So I kept tweaking around with that and trying here and there.
So what is the roadblock in these two scenarios that like we have a curriculum and a direction that a student must go in terms of playing and reading the music, and if they're not going to learn to read the music, they're not allowed to continue? Or, I mean,
I don't even think it's that. I think it was probably my own personal frustrations led a lot to it.
oh, so you're like, I don't want to do this, and your folks are like, that's fine.
Yeah, and the pressure of like, well, this is how you have to do this, and if you're not going to approach it in this way, like academically, they're really in a school setting, going forward, what path do you have if they can't instruct you on that level?
Huh. Okay.
It did spell problems down the road, I would say, for me academically and in school. As
Not
far
being
as
able
like,
to read sheet music?
no, not that, just my
Your own frustration?
my own
with learning?
frustration
Sure.
level with that whole environment, really, I guess. Fell
That's fair.
apart down the road.
Okay.
But yeah. So yeah, and I stuck with the fiddle for a while, even just playing by ear and trying to figure things
Cool.
out through watching, a lot of Cajun fiddlers. We
Yeah.
were really big into Branson when I was a kid, so we'd go to Silver Dollar City and I'd watch all these, like really great pickers
Yeah.
all the time that were just like they were legit professionals doing this every day, and they were polished, knew their stuff, and it's like that's what I want to do.
Okay.
Be on stage and be a badass entertainer.
Yeah.
Or try to, you
Right.
know. So, I mean, I'd put on like shows in the backyard on our deck like it was my stage with little toy guitar, like belting out those songs.
Nice.
So, even if I didn't know the right words.
So, eventually, fiddle gives way to mandolin.
It does, yeah.
Okay.
I was my parents were involved in a local gospel association called MoCan.
Okay.
And a friend of theirs had gotten a mandolin because they were singing as a husband and wife sort of duet. She wanted to start playing on that, and she brought it to the meeting one night, and I went ahead and picked it up. And mandolin and violin are the same; they're strung the same.
Okay.
They're EADG. So all the scales, everything is in pretty much the length, if you think about them, is close to the same.
Got to spin it around.
Yeah, so it was a super easy. Like I just started do 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 do, and set in with the jam band that night,
Okay.
which is always like a loose house band of all the pickers. and
Yeah.
Anybody that wanted to kind of try their hand at it. So, that was it. As soon as I picked that up, I was like, I'm hooked. I love it.
Cool.
But so yeah, I just wanted to play with mom and dad and do anything I could.
And so, Bluegrass Missourians, that's not your first band?
No, it's not. I didn't even know bluegrass was a thing. And I had heard it growing up, like really, like mostly through Silver Dollar City. I don't know if you've ever been to the park. It is piped in, ambient
Oh, yeah.
throughout the whole park. I didn't know what it was. But, gosh, one night we were coming home from a late night show. I caught Austin City Limits, and McCoury Band was on there.
Cool.
Opening for Patty Loveless that night. She was doing a bluegrass set. And they just like, the first song they hit was called All Aboard. It's a really badass song. I was hooked. I was like, they were in suits and they had slick back hair and looked so legit. And 5-piece bluegrass band. And I was like, shoot, I'm on fire for that. That sounds good. And it clicked. I was like, that's that sound I've heard Silver
Okay.
Dollar City my whole life. I just didn't know that it was a genre.
Sure.
I guess I just thought it was part of country, which
Yeah.
historically
Right.
it is.
Right.
So,
what is your first band then?
called the Tri-State Ramblers.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was with a guy, Daryl Klein, who he used to be a president of a local bluegrass club. He's passed away since then, and a few other friends. So yeah, they were all quite a bit older than me, and that was it. So
Okay.
until the fiddle player for the Bluegrass Missourians recruited me.
Okay.
When their mandolin player was going to step down, I was 16.
Seriously?
around that time.
Wow.
So
You had chops, I guess, already by then.
yeah, I had been going to the local clubs and jamming bluegrass and learning all the standards for quite a few years by then. So
Cool.
and that's where I met Greg. Actually, was with the Missourians.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's where everything sort of fell into place.
Nice. And then Greg Blake in Hometown last year put out Gardens and Memories.
It might be a little longer than that now.
Okay.
I can't remember. We recorded that stuff back in kind of during the pandemic.
Okay.
Went into studio to make a record out there. We had we worked on it for about a year leading up to that, just because we're all separated regionally.
Gotcha.
And Greg is very busy out on the road, so
Sure.
anytime we could meet up and work a little bit. Took about a year, I'd say, for everything to get really fall into place with that. But yeah, we that came out, I'm wanting to say like in 22 or 23.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So
And so if you guys work on that for a yearish and then you go into the studio, was that your first recording studio experience, putting together a full thing like that, or no?
No, not my first. I had done a few out. Well, I recorded when I was a kid with my mom in the studio. They used to record in Branson with a local guy. And then I had recorded some with a guy in Max Creek, Missouri. He had it was called the Audio Loft recording studio with the Missourians.
Okay.
That was my first like band experience where it was like, okay, we're doing this live. We're not comping all this together. We're going to sit down, mic everybody, separated, and play these songs, sing them, and pressure's on. If you make a mistake, keep going. You can edit it, dub it in later, things like that.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty organic one shot.
So which version was Gardens and Memories? Was that
Same thing, yeah.
You know, and for me, I think it's worth mentioning. I don't know how much of my life I went knowing that there wasn't just one approach to recording. Like everybody in the same room and plugged in and mic'd up and 1, 2, 1. But then it's like no.
Yeah.
This gets, we put down the drum thing and then so and so does his thing and we put it on there and then this.
It can't always be done well.
Recording live, one take.
Yeah, a lot of times you can tell when it comes out like that. You know what? Greg is one of those guys. It's like his rhythm is so solid, like a metronome, and his vocals. I remember when we were in studio recording all that, Dan was like, I love working with Greg because he doesn't need pitch correction. Which blew my mind. I was like, well, who in bluegrass is using pitch correction, And he goes, come on, Brian. Come on.
I would.
And I'm like, I don't know. I thought these were naturally really just fantastic vocalists that had awesome control and
pitch correction is like auto-tune?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think there are bands that do it live have auto-tune capabilities as they're doing their stage show. I've seen very, involved stage shows where somebody's working a lot of levels for them, but
wow,
which is crazy. It's come a long way.
Pressure's on, like you said.
Yeah.
But was it a fun experience making Gardens and Memories?
Yeah, it was excellent. That was my most legitimate studio I'd say I've ever been to. It was at East Tennessee State University.
Oh, wow.
A fella named Dan Bonner down there. He's a professor. They have a bluegrass and old time program at the university.
That's
there.
So cool. How long's it been around?
The program or the
Yeah.
gosh, I'm wanting to say like maybe 15 years or more. It's been around for quite a while.
Nice.
Maybe more like 20 or who knows. I'm not that well versed on it, but a lot of big names have come through there.
Sure.
People that played and a lot like former members of Allison Krauss and Union Station instruct there, things like that. So big people that know their stuff. Tony Rice's brother Wyatt Rice, I believe, is an artist in resident there or something along those lines.
Cool.
So yeah, it was neat to go and just experience the whole thing.
Yeah.
Get to go to Tennessee. There's a lot of stuff going on in East Tennessee, and out toward Asheville and things like that.
Cool.
So
So the Wishful Thinkers Hall of Fame, Matchsellers record, is one that's visible on their Bandcamp. I imagine you're on that one. Are you on others as well?
that's it for now. We're
Okay.
actually releasing in the process. We just had our first single come out, actually, I'm wanting to say Saturday?
Cool.
Maybe it was Friday.
Okay.
Dropped from a live album
Okay.
that we did live at the Crut Strings Warehouse in Merriam. That was opening for another band at Arkansas that was their like album release party. Andrew just happened to record it live through the board. He ran sound for that. He's a pretty tech savvy guy.
Nice.
So audio quality came out great. They had it mixed and sort of mastered. So that'll be our next thing releasing. But
Cool. So
Yeah.
Wishful Thinkers Hall of Fame, it's a full length, right?
It
just,
is,
just
yeah.
like Gardens and Memories.
I'm wanting to say 12. Yeah.
12 tracks.
Yeah, 12
Okay.
tracks.
And then the recording process to get that one done.
Yeah.
Very different or similar?
That
or?
was actually done over here in the Northeast Kansas City at a buddy of ours, Clark's house, Clark Wyatt.
Okay.
Yeah, we just recorded that all in his house. He's got an excellent, one of those old mansions over there that's like, I call it a mansion. They're like 6-bedroom, 2-story
Sure.
stacked.
Yeah.
Great
When you
acoustics.
pull up, you go,
all-
wow.
Right, So the cool thing there was, pocket doors.
Yeah.
All these neat features where we can sort of be in the same area but isolated tonally and sonically from each other. So we recorded that, in his living room pretty much.
But not all one take pressure.
all
song.
one take
Okay.
live, yeah.
So
Same thing. One,
so
two, boom.
sonically, you have to be separated because you don't want your stuff to bleed into somebody else's mic.
For the mix process later. Yeah.
Okay.
Tweaking
But I
those
mean-
levels. And
But you
so say like when you're doing this approach, you've got your own mic, you're isolated and controlled in a way, but you'll have a bleed over from the room, the ambient room noise. Say like we're doing it live, we get a really good take, but I fudged my break. I had a phrase I didn't like in there or something. They're like, okay, we'll take another pass at it. We'll drop you out, punch you in here. You play over that, and if we get one that's better and lines up good, edit it in.
Can you see each other?
There we could not. We were talking back and forth. He was upstairs in the control room.
So how do you
So-
hear one another?
Oh, when we were all recording live?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could pretty much see each other, definitely. You just try to separate by, like, so I'd be sitting, and I'd have a lower mic set up, maybe put, like, a little divider in front of me, just to block direct sound coming into that
Okay.
mic, You're always going to get the ambient room.
Sure.
Which you try not to overdub stuff. A lot of times if you didn't have a good break, everybody's like, let's just redo it, I mean, we recorded that whole
Overdub,
album.
meaning like come in and peel out a
Yeah.
part and put in the part where you do like your break. Okay.
Yeah, and when they're doing that, they can, they could say, just redo your whole break a few times. And then they'll take the little section out of there and they can make it.
Cut and paste.
Yep, they can cut and paste, adjust wavelengths and
Sure. Yeah.
make it to where, if you got a good mixer, a good engineer, you can't tell that a lot of that's been done, but sometimes you can. There's a little glitch or that little hiccup in the ambient noise. So.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of pressure, but it's fun.
Yeah.
And that's the way we make our music anyway.
Yeah.
We're comfortable with it, and if it's what I found is like if it's feeling good when you're doing it, it feels good. And later on, when you go back and listen to it, pretty much that's the one.
Yeah.
Like,
Nice.
might do it 3 or 4 times, but you're like, why? It's like lightning in a bottle. Why?
Yeah.
Why try to do it again? So,
Can I get you another one of those or something else?
I'm all right for
You're
now.
good. Okay.
Yeah.
So on the whole, would you say that you're the collection of your recording studio experiences has been fun and like a joyful?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
always.
You never have left one and been like that sucked. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I think as a musician that wants to put their best foot forward, on everything, you tend to feel restrained when you go into studio. You don't have the live vibes. You're not, and you're a little worried because, like, yeah, what if I do mess this up? Everybody, plus, like, I hate to say it, but like recording with Greg, he's a considerable, like, he's at the top of his game right now. And Dan, the engineer back there, tremendous vocalist and picker. I mean, like, top of the nation. So I'm like shaking, I hope I don't mess this up. I was very timid on recording with Greg. With Andrew and them, I was laid back, easygoing.
Nice.
But, probably popping weed gummies or something.
But to your point, with those two around, I mean, that's not like the kind of situation where you start a number live and you flub, you make a little mistake. Most folks in the crowd aren't going to pick up on it unless you draw the attention to it. But those cats, that are like at the top of their game and talent, they
you can see them look through the window at you like, what was that? And you go, oh man, okay, just
there's nothing.
Keep going, and they'll go, and they might, they're very nice about it, but you might get that click in and. You want to try that one again? And you're like, yeah, that's a great idea. I was thinking that. So,
got to have a little humility.
You do. It was a very humbling experience.
Wow.
It always is when you go into studio.
Sure.
Actually, I made a record when I was 13 at my mom's studio.
Fun. I
just got into bluegrass and all that, and I really was like, I want to make a record. And she was like, yeah, we got, this extra money. Because that's how we funded our stuff. They basically saved up from live stuff till they had enough to finance an album. Once they got that done, selling those, they would save that money back until they had enough to go make another record.
Smart, man.
Yeah, so I was on a few that way, and my mom was like, yeah, we got enough money. Let's go get you in studio.
Cool.
So
is it still around?
Somewhere. It's one of those, like, it's a gospel bluegrass album. That was the one, like...
You made a record when you were 13.
But she was like, yeah, I'll do it, but it's going to be gospel. I'm like, okay, Mom, that's fine. Because a lot of... My grandma, when I got into playing bluegrass, she was like, why do you want to play... That's so whiny, and she hated bluegrass, but... She's like, I like it when you sing it.
Define gospel for me, please.
A lot of it, old standard hymnals, from that to like, man, really some fire and brimstone. Like, I remember my mom had a friend, Linda Lester.
Okay.
That was, had a song, or Linda Haley. Her name, Time is Short and Hell is Hot. Stuff like that.
Okay,
like
but I mean, there's instrumentation.
Yeah. Always like pretty much to the country setup, maybe a piano, a lot of steel guitars when I was growing up. My mom always had a good steel player, drums, generally a good bassist.
Okay.
And you got to have a good rhythm guitar player and a lead guitar player. That's the classic country. Sort of
keys,
formula.
No piano.
Oh yeah, they had piano.
Okay.
So that's actually my piano teacher played in my mom's band, and that's how they had that connection. He was one of my dad's coworkers. Was a very accomplished jazz pianist around town. Played a lot. So
and the vocal approach to gospel is typically singular or multiple vocalists at the same time, or a mix.
Yeah. So that's funny you'd ask. So. In my mom's band, my grandmother, Martha, sang, and she sang...
Shouts out to Martha.
She sang, shouts out. She sang kind of a baritone harmony. That's who I learned how to sing harmony from, was her. And it was a very rudimentary approach to harmony. More like what you get at... Have you ever heard of shape notes singing? So like back in old time hymnals... Or even before hymnals, when people didn't really know how to read music, choral arrangements and things like that, they would use shape notes that would, like O, A, sort of give you the vowel and the sound, and that's how they would establish the melodies. So if you can imagine a very
for sure
rudimentary approach,
okay.
that was kind of grandma's harmony, but it let me tonally be able to hear that from a very young age, to where
cool.
When I got into like singing in choir in junior high and high school, like I latched right on, even though I could not read sheet music.
Yeah.
I knew what those parts were and what
Now,
they should be.
when you say harmony, that doesn't mean accompanying somebody else.
Yeah, it does.
It does.
To me. So like you'll have a lead. You're basically in country and bluegrass and a lot of gospel, you'll have a 3 to 4 part harmony. Now sometimes that fourth part is the bass. Sometimes bass isn't there. Most bluegrass is like a lead, a lower baritone part, and then a higher tenor above that. So you're forming a chord constantly around every
With
note.
vocals.
With vocals, yeah. So
Okay.
if the lead note is here, the tenor note might be here, you know?
Yeah,
Or,
yeah, yeah.
wait a minute, hold on here. Let me think. Here, 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 here. You know, spread across.
Sure.
That's sort of the bluegrass
Okay.
standard harmony. And that carries through to a lot of country too. So
But
that goes into choir. You know, so if you think every part in a choral arrangement sort of has the lead or the melody, the bass melody of everything, like 3 blind mice, 3 blind mice, is stacked above that, and then you've got a baritone below that, so they're forming the chord throughout a choral arrangement the same. So it was an easy way to like translate all that. I latched right on to choir. I loved it.
Okay, so, but there's not, I don't know why, but I hear the word gospel.
Sure.
And what immediately comes to mind is like a very performative, theatric Southern Baptist church where everybody's
sure,
hey, like it's a big, and there's robes and,
Oh, yeah.
But that's not what's happening. And,
Well, I mean, there's definitely, and there's place for that. So a lot of that breaks down denominationally is what I found growing up. And I grew up, my grandmother was a Baptist, which is a very like fundamentalist religion.
Yeah.
It's very basic. My stepfather was the son of a Pentecostal tent evangelist. She was a female tent evangelist back in the 50s, 60s. Boy, she could get fired up. And she had a church my whole childhood. I remember going to her church, and she played piano. Was actually just like self-taught. One of those things that clicked for her as well. Funny thing, like she's prophesied over me when I was a child that one of her grandchildren was going to have the gift of music, and that she thought it was going to be me before I played seriously anything. So that was like a kind of weird, but yeah, gospel, so much of it I grew up around. I like traveling, going to different, so like the associations my parents were in broke down regionally. There'd be like an Eastern Division, Central, Western, sometimes a Canadian one. I was up in Canada for a week when I was a kid. That was a wild experience, but you'd come across, and a lot of the way we'd finance getting to these was sing at churches on the way there, or different gospel programs, help make a little bit of extra money. In some like country churches out there might be like a old lady with a guitar, something like that, singing real old mountain gospel.
So if you're a gospel outfit looking for churches to play in, are there specific denominations that will be more accepting, and others that are like, no, they won't even entertain the idea?
Oh yeah, I mean you kind of, yeah, there are very like well, of course, really primitive. There are still, like to this day, like primitive Baptist churches where the music has to be very regimented. Maybe can have a piano and that's it. So no stringed instruments sometimes. So like they always say the fiddle's the devil's instrument.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So like, it shouldn't have a place in a church technically, but they're in churches all the time now. And
Sure.
church and music, as like Christian music, most people would think nowadays is like what you'd hear in the thrift store. The praise and worship stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, Lord, I lift your name on high, and
Right.
all that. But wasn't really a lot of that when I was growing up. There were a lot of like, gosh, just like these, it's almost like folk songs, like gospel folk songs that had been handed down, and they knew from different quartets or things like that. So They could be anything from like barbershop style or like doo-wop style to country to very hymnal, like nearer my God to thee type stuff.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so.
Wild.
Yeah. Is the common thread was God though, and
Yeah,
Jesus and the
sure.
rapture or anything through all of that.
And so Grandma, who gave you sort of this harmony foundation, says, "Why do you want to play bluegrass? It's so whiny."
Yeah.
And is she right in calling bluegrass whiny? If that's not an adjective I had ever.
I mean, it can be, and depending on the vocalist, it can be like, the high lonesome sound is like the classic trademark of bluegrass. Monroe, the father of bluegrass, had a very rakish, like, sort of approach to singing that high lonesome sound, almost sometimes bordering on like not hitting the pitch. Like, oh, he's flat, but he's doing it for a reason, and it's so that sort of like, it's like a cheese grater on your ear. I get it. There is a lot of,
So she did know what she was talking about a little bit. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, she was opinionated, so I sort of picked that up from her. They said, like, when I was a little kid, one of my aunts was like, "Oh, check out, this is a friend of mine. I want you all to hear his record," and put it on, and I was in the back seat. And after a few songs, I said something like, "I know music, and that ain't good music," or something like that. My grandma she's like, "I could wring your little neck back there." She was an old country girl, so.
That's funny.
Yep.
So Gardens and Memories, Greg Blake and Hometown, features you on mandolin, and then the Matchsellers, Wishful Thinkers Hall of Fame, and the forthcoming is a live release where you guys opened for somebody's release party.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
They're called Front Porch. They're based at Arkansas.
Yeah.
Great. That was a wild night.
Billy Brady, Whiskey.
No.
But he did.
That's Whiskey Mash.
He did episode 65 with Whiskey, or he's with Whiskey Mash, and I feel like that was last April, and I feel like they were doing like around the time that his episode was coming out. I feel like they were doing a gig with Front Porch at Lemonade Park.
Okay. Yeah.
Perhaps.
Sounds. It could.
I've heard of him from somewhere.
Yeah.
Front Porch, that is.
Yeah, I've
That's
been
cool.
hearing the name for years. That was the first time I had seen him live. I was sick that night. It wound up being the flu. But yeah, I was sick as a dog. I muscled through it, but I was really,
Man.
It was not a great night. And
So-
I drank a bunch of moonshine backstage.
Hey, I mean, that sometimes.
I said, "Hell, burn it out."
Yeah,
That's what I'm gonna
exactly.
do.
Exactly.
Yeah, it didn't work that way.
All right. So, roughly, when do you expect this live Matchsellers thing to be available for the folks to hear?
There is a release show planned. I would have to look up the
Okay.
specifics on that. I think it's
this summer.
no, I believe coming up like this spring.
The spring?
We're gonna actually try to do that. We're gonna recreate it. So the live album, the first night that we did this, and we've been sort of doing it to promote and generate buzz on what we're doing. Andrew's, it's like a literary show right now, where he selects different quotes from books. So like when we start, he's got this huge stack of books on stage, and
He plows his way through it.
Yeah, so
Nice.
he'll have a selected quote that sort of applies to the next forthcoming song, and we'll provide the background music for
love
suspense
that.
or
That's
whatever.
fun.
So yeah, it's been a while. People seem to enjoy that, so we're really hawking that right now.
Cool. Very cool.
That'll be the live show, and it'll be here in town somewhere.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere here.
Yep.
Well, again, thanks for being here. I appreciate you shooting me a list.
Yeah.
And, this is folks' lists, like any other element of this, kind of tend to live in one lane or a lane is sort of created. Point being, like, right now, I can't really put a finger on it, but I'm getting lots of firsts records that have been on 0 other guests' lists,
Oh.
and being 120 deep, like that's really fun.
Sure.
And it's not just everybody's got the same handful of. So I
There
don't.
are very influential records to everybody, and then there are personally influential
Yeah.
records, I guess. Yeah.
So I usually just roll through them chronologically in order of release year. And so if we do that, then we will knock out the only one from your list that has been on somebody else's list, which is Paranoid
Oh,
by
yes.
Black Sabbath. And I'm pretty sure that this has only been on one other list. Now, there have been a couple other Sabbath records, but this is from 1970, second and 19 for them, 8 tracks, 41 minutes. How does Paranoid wind up in your lap?
Man, so a buddy of mine, David Gant, he was going to art school down here at the Casey Art Institute. I was living with him at the time, and he's still is a great record collector and just music purveyor, I would say, in general. He had the stack of records, and we had a Fisher Price record player. You know the thing, right? For playing the little discs or whatever. Man, that thing could play his records, and I found Paranoid, and I was like, Black Sabbath, wasn't supposed to listen to that kind of stuff when I was a kid.
But you're out of the house.
I'm
now.
out of the house.
You're living
Yeah,
with him.
At this point, I've dropped out of high school. I am
Really
living down here with him.
How did your choice to do that go over at home?
Man, I really hit a rebellious period. A lot of it was just like making a hard 180 on religion.
Sure.
A lot of that was having to do with it, and just like hit a rebellious streak.
Yeah.
Maybe some stuff I probably should have taken therapy for when I was a kid, but it was working itself out in that way at that time. I finally was like, no, I'm done.
Okay.
That switch flipped on, and that was it.
So
I left home, and I met him oddly through like Civil War reenacting. I was a huge history buff.
What?
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really, that was I still, God, I don't reenact anymore, but I still have stuff,
Sure.
I do some film work locally with a company here in town, and
Cool.
sometimes it's nice just to like go out and go fish. Like me and my wife last year our anniversary was like an 1858 anniversary by the river. We took fishing poles and packed a picnic basket and just went out and had a good time, drank some wine, and chilled out. So yeah, I met him through that. He knew I played banjo, and he had a little like ukulele banjo. Like I want to learn some stuff.
Wait, did banjo get left out of your musicianship?
So like, man, when I started with mandolin and then I discovered bluegrass, I was like, I want to play all these instruments. So like, I think guitar naturally came next, and I had tinkered with guitar because my mom had one, and I'd been around them my whole life. So I started really heavy on that, then banjo, then dobro. Then at some point I had a bass. Somebody had given me an upright bass. So yeah, I had it all, and just wanted to, and that's around the time I recorded that album. I was like, I can play everything, I don't want to show off, of course.
Nice.
So, and my mom was all about it. She was like, this is what my son's going to do. And,
I mean, Grandma called it.
Yeah,
right?
well,
Right.
In a way, yeah. I mean, I didn't, I hit a point where I was like, I don't want to do this, like I saw my mom and stepdad tried to go full time on the road. He had to take early retirement. She had retired from her job. She was like working at a combine factory building farm tractors and stuff like that. A really hazardous job.
I was gonna say, sounds dangerous.
Yeah, she didn't want to. She had several coworkers. They worked like by the spray booth, and they had fumes all the time. And she just like, she said that God was telling her to get out of there. So yeah, she went ahead and retired early, and that was it. That was probably mid '90s, I'd say she retired.
And they made a go of it, and it wasn't easy.
No, it was not.
Okay.
No, there were definitely some lean times around then, and probably like around the time that I decided to leave. It was maybe the leanest, you know.
Oh, interesting.
For them personally, they overcame that period, but
Okay.
you know, I definitely remember like being on like, you know, it's like food stamps.
Yeah.
We were that hard up.
You gotta eat, man.
For sure.
I mean, there's no.
Tale as old as time.
If you're interested in staying alive, you got to put food in your mouth.
Exactly.
From time to time.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So you're living with David Gant,
Yep.
and you have virgin Black Sabbath ears.
Yeah, oh man, it just like blew my mind, you know. So David, like he was a very influential person to me. He's still a great friend to this day.
Cool.
He's a killer guy. But yeah, that's kind of how I wound up
Toking
smoking
some tree,
weed,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you know, and that combined with like reenacting, of course, it's like cosplay. You know, whoa, cool. This takes it to a whole other level.
Right.
Now I can be stoned and do this. So yeah, I was all in. He wanted me to move down here because he's like, you want to like form a punk rock band? And I was like, no, I don't know how to play. You know, I don't even have an electric guitar, and I play country guitar. And he was like, that's what I want. It's gonna be weird, but trust me, you know. So okay, so he was living in like a warehouse down in the West Bottoms, like before it was hip. Like it was a real shithole. down there.
Kemper is around, and
So you know where the Pistol is, or the Ship down there in the
Yes,
bottom?
I
So
love the Ship.
right next to that, they lived on the second floor. It's technically the Ship now, I guess.
Wow.
At that time, or no, now it's Cap Gun Studios. They do art and
Okay,
stuff up
okay.
there, lessons,
Cool.
things like that.
collection of fascinating buildings.
It is, yeah. It was a magical, like, it blew my mind. You know, he was like, well, come down here, you'll show me some banjo stuff, and we'll have a little like punk rock practice. Like my buddy Devin's got a guitar, and like and I went in there. These kids had like a half pipe they had built back there for skating.
Wow.
And did you ever see like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Sure.
And they go to like where the Foot Clan hangs out, where they're recruiting all the kids, and they're punks, and they're skating and smoking cigarettes. Like, it was like that in real life.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my god, this is like, it blew my mind.
Yeah.
You know. And I'd never heard punk rock before. And what we played was not punk rock by most people's standards. I would call it art rock.
Okay.
With a punk approach.
Cool.
You know. So and done by a bunch of punk kids that were like,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
we don't care. So we just wanted to piss everybody off, including our audience.
Well,
Especially our audience.
you know, if you look at the trajectory of rock, you know, I've in 40s, 50, like you're getting like doo-wop and some of the oldies kind of stuff, and the Beatles and so, and then by the time this album comes out, I would suggest, and I'm no rock historian by any stretch, but I would suggest that this really opens things up to a whole, I didn't know you could do that, series of tributaries, right? Like it's like,
Definitely.
Stones and Zeppelin and Floyd, they're kind of like some of the bigger, but it's all still, Pink Floyd is Pink Floyd, right?
Sure.
But it's blues based,
Right,
and
right.
it typically isn't varying too much. And this said, we're at dark effects. We're gonna do whatever we want. Track time length. It just
and like fairly psychedelic.
Yeah.
That's the common thread through like that Floyd, like you're saying, that whole sort of psychedelic approach. I think what blew my mind about this album in particular is like, so I had heard of Black Sabbath, obviously. I had a friend in the neighborhood that their parents were huge Ozzy fans. So I equated Black Sabbath with that, and these were like what you would consider metalheads.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't even pursue, and I knew what Ozzy sounded like, and there were some probably that. So this is like the early '90s, mid '90s, when I'm around that, and he might have still had stuff on the radio at that time. I think
Sure.
Ozzy.
yeah.
And he was still doing Ozfest and all that junk, So that's what I assumed was that when I heard this record, of course, like, and I had already started like drug experimentation and things like that. I was like, whoa, this is metal? This doesn't sound like what I'm thinking, which to me was like, what's on 98.9 The Rock?
Yeah.
Like, it's metal. Like,
Yeah.
no, not Paranoid.
No.
Paranoid, and to me, so like, and having a dad that was a drummer. So my dad was like a classically trained drummer back in the 50s, and he grew up playing with his mom at tent revivals, and they had a little family band. So his approach, I could relate to that because I was like, he had a very classic-handed. He held the sticks differently than kids did. Kids wanted to play grunge and beat on everything, and he had the finesse and the correct grip, the matched grip, or no, not the matched grip, the alternating, sort of jazzy approach to it. Played country, but he was a tasteful player. The drumming in this album, I was like, I can hear enough of that classical background, that jazz approach to his solos and things like that, to where I was like, man, my dad would appreciate this, So like, this is something I could relate to musically. I was starting to sort of put things together and really appreciate my childhood and what I grew up around, like, which was
so Ozzy. This is mid '90s when you first hear Paranoid.
No, this is later. Yeah.
Okay.
That was just like my impression growing up in the 90s.
Yeah, gotcha.
I'm wanting to say like 2005 I moved out around that time. I was 17.
Okay.
And yeah, so that was that summer. That was my first independent summer.
Okay.
Really the first band I locked on to, and I just like, I played that record, Well, the first, like, I was going through and I was looking at the tracks because there's 4 on each side. And like Iron Man, like, I've heard Iron Man. I hate that song. So I flipped it over to the back, and the first one's Electric Funeral, which I was like, whoa, this is something different, and it just, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Actually, my wife, that's how I got her to hang out. I was like on repeat with this album, and we were at a party one night, and she was, it was like a graduation party before all the art school kids had their ceremony the next day, and I was like, you want to get out of here and, like, go smoke some weed at my apartment and listen to Black Sabbath? And she was like, yes. And
wow.
So that was it.
Cool.
Went home, and that's how I started getting acquainted with.
I'm gonna try that next time I'm in the right.
Give it a shot, but make sure you've got weed waiting for him, because
right.
I did not, and definitely.
Did you scrape some resin?
No, I didn't even. She just like says, "Screw it, let's just, I'm tired. Let's go to bed." And
okay.
Like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
nice.
was just this dumb kid. Like,
so did you think there was weed?
I thought I did, yes. It was that point of my life where you're doing so much so fast that you lose track of things here and there. I mean, that was, I started experimenting very heavily that summer. I never, there were drugs I knew that, so my real father was, I had heard a drug user.
Okay.
He passed when I was 3 in an accident at work, so I didn't really ever experience that side.
Something more dangerous than the combine factory?
It was actually a tractor that killed him.
Fuck.
He was mowing around a lagoon, brush hogging, and hit a soft spot. It rolled over, crushed, threw him out. He didn't have a belt on. It was, this would have been 92 when this happened, so I was 3 and a half at that time. Awful. But I was always acutely aware of, like, I know that addiction a lot of times can be looked at as like a inherited and hereditary trait passed down. My mom was very open with me about, like, her history with alcohol and things like that when I was a kid, and in the way of, like, getting the talk from your parents, don't do this, and here's why.
Yeah.
But I knew that my dad had, like, a cocaine problem.
Interesting.
So there were certain things that I avoided. I never wanted to mess, too much with that. I didn't want to. I knew I didn't want to do heroin.
Right.
Hard things like that. But really, like, man, when the first time, I hate to say it, like, but the first time I smoked weed, I felt like I'd been lied to about a lot of things, because I was like, this isn't bad. I had this perception that, like, this was gonna kill me.
Yeah.
And
For sure.
it was such a fairly, I don't know.
Innocuous.
Yeah, exactly. It was just a great, fun experience with a friend. And I was like, wow, this is great. And it just like, that was it from there. I was like, okay, cool.
So do you then check out other Sabbath records? Do you ultimately check out solo Ozzy stuff?
It kind of got me into metal in general. So that summer, like playing in the punk band, our band was called like Under Ogre. I don't even know where they came up with that name. It was my buddy Dave and his friend Samson that had gone to high school. They were like old buddies. They both got into punk at the same time, and they were like super gnarly, crusty punk, like stank, you know.
Right.
And I was like, those kids are cool. I want to be like that. So I became crust punk at that point. Like I was like,
Dirty
I want to
clothes.
go. I want to go hop trains. I want to do this. I want to do that. But yeah, it was like I want to give myself stick and poke tattoos and do stupid shit all summer. And that was fun.
Okay.
For a few summers.
Yeah.
And then that wore off very quickly. Yeah. Around that time, I had abandoned bluegrass. Wasn't playing at all. I had quit the Bluegrass Missourians that I was in. They hired back their old mandolin player. And I didn't really step back in until they lost a guitar player at some point, and the mandolin player needed to switch back to guitar. They said, Brian, you know, like, would you come play? I'm like, yeah, fine. So it's kind of how I got roped back in.
Shook the rust off?
Yep. And I've been back in ever since. But yeah, that got me into metal. You know, I started checking out other metal bands, and there were some around town too. The punk rock scene kind of bled over at that time into the art scene in KC and into the metal scene. So a lot of those lines were blurred, and things that like purists and people that really examine those genres might be like, no, that's not punk or that's not metal.
Yeah.
I would all equate it as punk,
sure,
almost, in a way. Even the stuff we were doing, even though it was weird psychedelic art rock with a country guitar, was still punk to me.
Yeah.
Because we were like,
right,
stick it up.
Right.
We don't care.
So other Sabbath records and solo Ozzy stuff, yes or no?
Early Sabbath. Later Sabbath, not into.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And later Ozzy. Not really into, you know.
It wasn't
just
the same.
For some reason it was like that time and place. And still to this day, like, God, there was like one long car ride I took where I just had this, I finally got a CD copy of it. So I was like, I got my anti-skip CD player, my tape adapter. I'm going to listen to this the whole way down there. And I just like, on that 4-hour drive, got so stoned and listened to this album on repeat. And still to this day, like if I'm driving on a long, and I put that record on, like it transports me right back to my grandma's car.
Oh, nice.
With the windows down. It's August. I'm heading to Springfield. I'm hot as hell. Like, oh my God. Just crazy how I'm a very nostalgic person.
Same.
Like I thrive on nostalgia. I love it. It's comfortable.
Cool. Well, from 70 to 72, self-titled Newgrass Revival. First of 9, 10 tracks, 36 minutes. Sam Bush, Bela Fleck et al. Tough to find this one digitally.
Oh, wow.
But I certainly know Ginseng Sullivan, Great Balls of Fire, and Lonesome Fiddle Blues. Mm-hmm. What is it about this record that earned its spot on your list?
Yeah, so disclaimer though, Bela actually wasn't on this album.
He wasn't?
No, it was Courtney Johnson.
Okay.
And the bass player was a fellow named Ebo Walker.
Okay.
On that first record when they put that out. The track listing's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Gosh, I found that at a truck stop in Indiana on the way to a music convention.
Cassette?
No, a CD.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somehow it was in the CD bin there. Picked that thing up and popped, and my mom was like, "Oh, this says bluegrass." I'm like, "No, it doesn't. It says newgrass." And like, whatever, I'll try it, Mom. And put it in and was just like, "Whoa, okay, this is totally different bluegrass." Like everything I knew was out the window with bluegrass at that point.
Really?
Or just, at least just no holds barred.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
It was still enough of a traditional approach that I could identify with it and feel comfortable with it, but it was so God, I never heard people jam like that. Like bluegrass is structured, you know. You're either playing over the verse with your instrumental break or you're playing over the chorus instrumentally, the melody of it. They would just go and go and go until they wound down and then back into the next chorus. I'm like, what was that last 2.5 minutes of like, where, what? Loved it though. Yeah, they were like, Sam Bush as a mandolinist is like top of the mountain. Everybody looks up to Sam Bush. Newgrass Revival really did create the newgrass genre. There were other groups around. There was like the Bluegrass Alliance at the time.
Yep.
Things like that. But yeah, they're the standard for all of that.
Yeah.
Still, I love those songs. Nobody does these songs, man. Ginseng Sullivan.
Fish does.
Fish
really? Covers Ginseng Sullivan.
So, I get people ask me all the time, like, so are you into Fish?
Right.
I'm like, no.
String Cheese Incident covers, they put Lonesome Fiddle Blues on one of their records.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's another one. String Cheese. I always forget about them. I never delved into that terribly too much.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, I could not find it anywhere digitally. So I just put on a playlist, a Newgrass Revival playlist, and really, really enjoyed it. Now, for a small handful of years in college, I had a radio show in Durango, Colorado. Okay.
So
just
Telluride's
neighbor to the south,
sort of. Town. Yeah. There's the Meltdown out there, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's and then there's the Folk Alliance Fest up in Lyons or not. I think it's in Lyons.
Yeah, there is something in Lyons.
But lots and lots of bluegrass and newgrass and so like I didn't
whole world out there.
You know, somebody shared a couple of Bailiff records with me before I lived there, and I was kind of like, well, this is interesting. And then I was like, oh man, this is a whole galaxy of
Bela. Oh
yeah.
For sure. It's not even bluegrass. It's just Bela Fleck.
Yeah.
Like he is his own, in my opinion, like his own genre. For sure.
From 72, we take a larger leap to 85 with Big Lizard in My Backyard. The Dead Milkmen. So, love the first. No Newgrass records on anybody's list. No Dead Milkmen records on anybody's list.
Wow.
This is first of 10 for them from 1985, 21 tracks, 42 minutes. Punk rock from Philadelphia. Punk Rock Girl from a later record, I think, made the heaviest circulation of all of their tracks. But this one gave us Bitchin' Camaro.
Yes.
Which I didn't realize or remember until getting ready for this that like a big, huge piece of every track on this record is super short, but the big bulk of Bitchin' Camaro is like the talking up to. Remember,
hey Jack, what's happening?
I
don't know.
It's really important that you ask me what kind of car I have, however that goes.
All right.
Yeah. So what's the story? I mean, I think I kind of already know, but behind Brian McCarty and the Dead Milkmen.
Oh man, that's also around that same summer, Dave he was into tapes. He had this bag of cassette tapes.
Cool.
In a Ziploc gallon bag. He took it everywhere with him. Left it in my car one time, and I was like, what the Big Lizard in My Backyard? What is that? And I put it in and was like, whoa, okay, this is like hilarious. It was the first, the lyrics, I was like, Jesus Christ. Like, I don't know if you've ever listened to a lot of the Dead Milkmen. It's very crass.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, like, there was stuff on that album, like, talking about, like, his mongoloid sister and, like, all kinds of, like, I was like, whoa, this is wild. And I realized after a while, and delve further into the Dead Milkmen, some of their later stuff, like, they were an art band, man. They weren't a punk band.
Yeah, I remembered when I put this on, I think I grabbed a copy of this at one point to have Bitch and Camaro at my disposal. But I remember when I put it on for this, and then when I first discovered them, not as heavy as I expected.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
They're not like
it's childish.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
but also it's punk rock because nobody else is doing anything like it, really.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I don't know if that was like, so they were a Philly band.
Yeah.
And kind of like part of that Philly skate, coast culture. They go down to the shore sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's all things I can't identify with at all, but I thought were hilarious when I was hearing them like talking about like going down to the shore and playing some video games and buying some Def Leppard t-shirts. And then he's like, don't forget your Motley Crue t-shirts. The proceeds go to get the lead singer out of jail. And I was like, oh, that's okay. That's hilarious.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, it really explained, I incidentally came across this, but it really explained a lot of Dave's. So he was our lead singer in the punk rock band and lyricist and, brains of the operation. It was a wild band, and he would wear like he wore like a union suit, the red one-piece long johns,
Okay.
with cut off sleeves and cut off real short, and he'd wear like one of the sleeves as a mask, and then he had like a sock monkey stuck into his belt, and he would just like prance around the stage like an infant, like throwing a tantrum sometimes. But it was
I mean, that sounds punk rock AF, as the kids say these days.
It was wild. Like, he loved G.G. Allen and the Murder
there you go.
Junkies
There
and
you
all
go.
that. Like, that very crass approach of like, man, I don't know, dude, you're pushing that line. And we pushed that line. Like, we weren't a very popular band. Nobody from that scene at that time probably remembers Under Ogre, but we were like, we're awesome. Like, we're the only real punk band out here.
Of course.
Pissing all these punk kids off at these punk shows. Like,
Nice.
yeah, loved it. Yeah, that's a time and place thing, but just totally coincidental. Like, wound up in my car, and I was like, this explains his lyrical approach and where he's coming from and his demented mind.
Right.
Like, he's been listening to this stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
So then that led me into that whole bag of tapes and
Fun. How long did you
summer.
keep it with you?
Just for a while. He wanted it back eventually.
Of course. Yeah. Did you feel like you made it through a couple or three though?
Yeah, I remember that. There was also a there was a Bo Diddley in there.
Interesting.
There was a Wham tape.
Okay.
Some other weird stuff.
Sure.
He had some reggae tapes too, and then some mixtapes he had made.
Nice.
And our first, like, all of our records we made with Under Ogre, were on a little Casio. You remember the recorder, play and record at the same time. Live electric instruments, sounded like shit.
Of course.
And then we would reproduce them by holding that Casio up to a speaker and recording it, so it just like degraded.
Shittier and shittier by generation.
And over tapes, you
Yeah.
know. So like at the end you'd have Dolly Parton, you can't be bacon if your light don't shine.
That's awesome.
All our shirts, like we would screen print shirts over our old shirts that had not been washed, mind you. So like
Crusty.
accumulated filth, like we're
Wow.
selling that. We were just wild. I didn't wear shoes that whole summer. I was like, a buddy of mine bet me $50,
Indoors or out.
indoors or out.
Wow. That
He
is
was like, I bet you
awesome.
$50 you can't go. And I was like, you're on.
Did you collect?
I did.
Nice.
For $50.
Yeah,
Though. Like,
yeah.
that was stupid. I hurt my feet so bad that summer. It was in so many sketchy places. Like, I should have, I don't know, maybe my mom praying
Right. Wow.
kept me out of all that trouble.
So a big leap forward from Big Lizard in My Backyard to Del and the Boys. 2001, Del McCoury Band. Now, this is, we mentioned Fish just a minute ago. There's a documentary called Bittersweet Motel where Todd Phillips follows the band around for
Okay.
a summer, and then they go to Europe, and then they come back and they have a 70,000 fan festival.
Okay.
And it's so, I watch it at least once a year. It's so good. They've been my bread and butter for many, many years.
Cool.
So there's a cool part where Trey is driving one of these old Isuzu Trooper 2s, I think it is. It's a real boxy SUV, and
I know what you're. Yeah.
Cameraman is sitting shotgun, and the interviewer is in the back. So you're getting this straight shot, but he's looking back, and
So open road ahead. And
they're in Vermont.
Oh, okay.
And it's completely just, they're in the woods. It's snow covered.
yeah.
They're getting ready to leave his home to go wherever, but they haven't started driving yet. And the question is asked, how do you summarize this band's place in the American rock? It's like, I grew up going to the mall in New Jersey. I like, all this random stuff. And people always say, I'm going to be the next Jimi Hendrix, or I'm going to be the next Jerry Garcia. No, you're not. You didn't grow up listening to Del McCoury. You didn't grow up listening to Bill Monroe. There's no way. Cool. So I was like, oh, this Del McCoury. I know the name, but it forces me to have the opportunity to like look up a little bit.
That's right, Del. Yeah.
So this guy, this record, 6 of 16, 12 songs, 41 minutes, goes from playing guitar and singing for Bill Monroe to playing and singing guitar with his two sons.
Yeah.
Which
insane. Right?
Covers the whole cool spectrum, I would think.
Yeah.
31 International Bluegrass Music Association awards, and at 85 now, is only 7 years removed from his last album, which I believe is called Del McCoury Still Plays Bluegrass.
Yeah, right.
I really, really love the mix of bluegrass and rock and punk in your list. So tell me the Del McCoury story.
Yeah, that actually, so that's responsible for my bluegrass obsession. That was the band I caught on Austin City Limits, I mentioned earlier. Yeah. No, actually, I was watching PBS. We had a conversion van that had the TV in between the two front seats, and I could get local stations on that. We were driving home one night. I was watching PBS, and Austin City Limits was on.
Gotcha.
That show.
Okay.
And he opened up with that, and I was just like floored. Man, yeah, Del McCoury, talk about a career. That dude has been like since the 60s, is when he started playing with Monroe. If you ever played with Monroe, you're schooled. You're like one of the, elite of elite, pretty much. Everybody played for him. Then that was school to them, for sure.
And he wasn't taking any schlubs,
No, for sure. He was very demanding all the time of his tone and tempo, and even it wasn't always the same. He would go directionally different approaches with the band. You can tell, and there's eras definitely of Monroe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Like the Del era of Monroe I love. There's a lot of good stuff he did with Monroe. I think that's like the Midnight on the Stormy Deep era. It's in the 60s. He was in his prime, because he started like heavy in the, I'm thinking 30s or 40s. Monroe did.
Yeah.
So, 60s. He was like top of the game in his prime, and that's when the festival, sort of scene starts too. Bluegrass festivals in general didn't really exist. I think the first one was 65 over in Virginia, Fincastle, Virginia. And then that became a whole thing itself, which has exploded. I don't know if really. Maybe there were other genres that were holding festivals. I know the county fair thing was a deal.
Sure. It's not quite the same.
No, not really. Yeah, because this is like centered around the music and also like name another festival where like what it's centered around is everybody bringing an instrument and jamming. It doesn't happen at like Coachella or whatever. I don't know what people are doing. Yeah, right. That's all about the bands.
Yeah.
But these are both. Like there's a section of people that are there for both the stage shows and the jam circles. And then there's the consistent fans that just like, I'm going to plant my ass in this lawn chair. This is my spot.
For 3 days.
For 3 days. And I'm going to be here. And you're not. Yeah. You ain't gonna move me, so. And
probably, high potential for making lifelong friends and acquaintances by, being one of those fans.
Say it, yeah,
right?
For sure. Some of my best, for
cool.
Sure.
Well, this was Dell and the Boys was a treat. It really was.
He's a fantastic singer, and like I mentioned, with the rakish almost. Sometimes that's what my nana was like. That's what she was thinking of.
Sure.
People like Dell.
Yeah.
Got that nasally sort of voice, and I love it.
I get that. I also think that, and maybe not 100% of the time, but I think most of the time, if I put on bluegrass instrumentation and vocals, they do a 180, where it's like I'm listening to all this string work and instrument harmonization, and the vocals are kind of coming at me from over here.
Sure.
Whereas in straightforward rock, like the vocals are out front in your face almost, and you gotta like listen to hear the riff
way across.
Yeah,
there is a definite bluegrass pan, and that is from a very specific, like 2001. There was a sound in bluegrass
right.
even at that time, in an approach. So to the mixing and everything, I feel like lately it's taken more of an organic sound. I don't know if that's that the equipment has caught up. There's so many good programs and mixing softwares and microphone companies and people that just like have majored in this, and that's all they know.
Yeah.
Like, I know audio. I'm an audiophile, like in that. I love it. It's
Sure.
It's a world I don't understand, but those are the people that make you sound the best.
Yeah. And
they know.
if you got somebody that does understand in your crew, then forget about it. Like
right.
That goes on your plate, sir.
Sure,
Sure, ma'am.
And you talk about the mixing or the panning maybe so much, and the vocals. What I like about bluegrass, and what you'll see with Dell if you watch Dell live, a lot of bluegrass is a single mic approach. So you got a single condenser. You might have a few peripheral mics for instrumentation and backups. You might have a bass direct for some reason. That's easier to work in the mix, but so much of it's a delicate dance around that mic. And the guy that's doing the lead is going to be right up in front with his instrument for that 1 second.
Yeah.
And then he's fading out. It's the Matchsellers approach. It's kind of how we do it with Greg as well.
Okay.
A couple side mics, and that puts all the harmony right here, so your lead's centered. You've got your tenor, baritone, and everybody can hear
Way
each
to bring
other.
it full circle.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Nice.
So,
well, fantastic list. It's I suppose any person in my chair could say, not every record on every list is going to be for you and your cup of tea, and some are harder than others to make it through. But when I get a full list of like, that was fun, I can't wait to revisit some of those without the pressure of like trying to not sound like an idiot to do this. So anyway, thank you for that. I like to close with a short set of goofy questions.
Sure.
And then we'll wrap and get you out of here.
All right.
And the first would be, if we can pretend that all of us have, some version of a personal and a professional bucket list. Mm-hmm. Let's say you're given all the resources to hammer out number one on both of those lists. What would they be for you?
My personal bucket list would be, I really want to this is weird. I want to build a period, like a mid-19th century, like George Caleb Bingham-esque raft. And I want to raft the Missouri.
Oh, dude, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
That's not weird at all.
In sort of a living history capacity.
Sure.
I think that would be really cool.
Okay.
So,
how about a professional?
Professionally, I would, in the end, I would love to be able to support myself with music.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
In general.
Perfect. Nice.
Yeah.
You get to have lunch with anyone you're choosing, dead or alive. Who is it and why?
Oh, it would have to be my dad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
To hear his voice.
Oh, man.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know what he sounds like.
Wow.
Yeah.
My son said to me, it's been a while ago now. I think I had gotten him out of the tub and was sitting on the side of the tub, drying him off, and he was rubbing the top of my head, which I shave, you know.
Sure, yeah.
And he was like, "Will you grow your hair out again one day so I can feel it? I don't know what your hair feels like." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." And then every time it's like 2 days long, I'm like, "Oh God, I can't even
stand it.
Right, yeah.
Itching.
But I get that. Yeah. You're given the ability to visit your past self at any age of your choosing. What age are you choosing, and what are you saying?
17.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell myself to stay in school
Okay.
and just shut up and chill out.
Sorry, it's not. I mean, it is funny, but it's also really good advice
Yeah.
for probably most 17-year-old boys.
Really, you know, I mean, I got my GED in the long run. Everything's evened out. I got a great career. I've got my music career, you know, going. I got family life. Everything's great. But
Stay in
I
school
would
and
still
chill out.
I would still tell myself, yeah, stay in school.
Nice.
It would have been a few months.
There's a professor at UMKC who I studied a little bit under, named Bob Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
And he, in addition to being a professor, publishes this thing called New Voices. And it features poets and artists and all kinds of stuff. It's a quite an undertaking. And if it's still going on, they did a couple, it might have done them quarterly. For years, and with it came New Voices on the Air, so the radio companion to the publication. The course I took from him was called magazine editing, and he grouped us in here. Go make a magazine, like assemble a staff, have stories, have assignments, features, add the whole nine, and then that's the class. So he said at the top of the semester for that class, people are so infinitely more apt to be successful if you give them deadlines and you give them consistent, gentle reminders about those deadlines. Mm-hmm. I love that quote. It's puts a lot of order into a chaos feeling. Anyway, so are you somebody who, given a deadline for whatever it is, like that's really good for you and you finish early with plenty of time to revisit and feel confident about whatever the thing is? Or are you a performer under pressure that procrastination has caused?
Gosh, I don't want to cop out and say both.
I was going to say, or a mix of both.
Depends on what I'm doing, you know? Like at work, I can be both. Professionally, I try to just like jump on things. I'm into it. Let's do this now.
Cool.
Strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
But yeah, at work, you know, I'm a totally different. Not different. I'm still like, I'm a take charge, lead the way. I'm a technician. I roam around and repair things. So I'm self-supporting. I got to be accountable to myself, or I don't have a boss breathing down my neck or cracking at me. So, I think I'm more of a delve in.
Okay.
You know, cool. Honestly.
Yeah.
There's if I don't like it, I'll procrastinate it as long as I can.
Yeah. Last but not least, please complete this for me. The world would immediately become a better place in which to live, if only
people went outside barefoot more.
Hey, but not in shady places for an entire summer.
That's exactly.
Hoping for a $50 payout.
Yeah, right. At some point, it was just, stick it to them.
Yeah,
that's what.
Right. Very cool, Brian McCarty. Thank you so much.
Hey.
I appreciate the time. It's very nice to meet you. If you want to keep your finger on the Matchsellers pulse, Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah.
For Greg Blake and Hometown, Greg's Facebook.
We also have a website, so you can follow Greg at gregblakemusic.com.
Okay.
And then matchsellers.com has a great up-to-date schedule, and it's sort of coded for if it's a duet, 3-piece, or 4-piece.
Interesting.
Because we've got a lot of different, stuff. And Andrew musically has a lot of different stuff going on.
Sure.
So.
And then Davis and McCarty. You just create a page for that.
Yep, just created a page for that. We'll post
On
events
Facebook.
there as we go. Yep, on
Okay.
Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just Davis and McCarty. Stop by and give us a like. And,
Cool.
We'll keep you guys posted there. I don't have a lot coming up with him, but what we do, definitely.
You're in 3 bands and a husband and an employee. And,
Yeah, it's a lot.
I mean, it's all got to come from somewhere, right?
Yeah,
So,
it does.
thank you so much. Appreciate it. And
Appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
It was
Hope to talk to you soon.
Great time.
Thanks.
Thank you.